When Ethan Cole set out to camp on Patagonia's deadliest mountain, the last thing he expected to find was his own name carved into a rock face, years before he arrived. Locals begged him not to go, swearing no man ever returns the same. He thought they were superstitious. Until the wind started whispering in a voice that sounded just like his dead brother. Did Ethan survive the mountain? Or did something else come down in his place? The small plane touched down on a dusty airstrip just outside El Chultan, its propellers slicing through the cold morning air like blades against silence. Ethan Cole stepped off, filming every second with his trademark GoPro strapped to his chest, narrating into the lens with the familiar cocky charm that had earned him over 2 million YouTube subscribers. "We're here," he announced to the camera. The last uncharted stretch of Patagonia. No map. No guides. No Wi-Fi. Just me, the mountain, and the legend. But behind the swagger, his eyes betrayed a hint of something else, determination laced with desperation. At a nearby roadside stall, an old man selling tea locked eyes with him and muttered something under his breath. Ethan didn't speak much Spanish, but he caught the word morto. Dead. The man pointed toward the peak shrouded in early fog, Monte Cielo Negro. Locals didn't name it often. When they did, it was with spit in the dirt and fingers crossed behind their backs. Later, in a village diner, a young waitress leaned over and whispered, "Please, don't go there. We lost 2 climbers last spring. We never found their bones." Ethan smiled politely and turned the camera off. He had heard ghost stories in Cambodia, curses in Iceland, banshees in the Scottish Highlands. None of them ever amounted to more than local lore and perfect content. But as he wandered the streets gathering B-roll, he started noticing something odd. Every local he spoke to, every passerby, every bartender, all said the same thing: people who climb that mountain come back wrong. If they come back at all. That night, in his hostel, Ethan edited a short teaser for his Patreon subscribers. "Tomorrow, I make history. I'm camping alone on Patagonia's forbidden peak. Wish me luck." His fingers hovered over the post button, and for a moment, he hesitated. The wind howled outside, long and low, almost like a moan. He shook it off and hit upload. The next morning, before sunrise, he packed his drone, camping gear, emergency satellite beacon, and set out on a rented bike toward the trailhead. The fog grew thicker as he approached, swallowing the narrow road hole. At the base of the mountain, he found a wooden sign, hand-carved and warped from decades of rain.
El que sube sin permiso, baja sin alma.
Whoever climbs without permission, descends without a soul. He laughed under his breath, chalked it up to superstition, and began the ascent, recording every step. Hours passed. The trail disappeared into stone and scrub. No birds. No wind. Just silence so deep it pressed against his ears. That night, he pitched his tent in a narrow valley below a jagged cliff face. In his last clip before sundown, he joked, "If I don't post tomorrow, send a search party, yeah." He grinned, but his laugh didn't echo. It felt like the mountain swallowed it whole. At 2:13 a.m., the first scream tore through the valley, long, human, and close. Ethan sat up instantly, grabbing his flashlight. The tent's fabric fluttered as if someone ran a hand across it. He unzipped the flap, shone his light into the dark. Nothing. No wind. No footprints. Just the heavy stillness of a place that didn't want to be found. He turned the camera back on, his voice trembling for the first time. "I think someone, or something, is out there." But the strangest part wasn't what he heard. It was what he smelled. Campfire smoke. Despite the fact that he hadn't lit one. Ethan hadn't always been the kind of man who tempted death for subscribers. Years before the Patagonia expedition, before his name was ever searchable, he was just a lanky college dropout from Portland with a backpack and a Canon T3i, filming hikes with his older brother, Liam. Liam was the adventurous one, the fearless one, the one who believed that nature was a puzzle and every summit was another piece to place. The two of them shared a bond that no one could replicate. Late-night road trips, whispered dreams over bonfires, shared secrets that never made it into the vlogs. Their small channel, Wilder Minds, was more of a diary than a business. That changed 5 years ago when Liam decided to do a solo trek across the Altai Mountains in Siberia. Ethan had begged him not to go alone, pleaded even, but Liam had laughed it off and said, "Some things you have to find by yourself." He disappeared 10 days in. No calls. No signal. No trace. Russian authorities eventually found torn clothing, a shredded sleeping bag, and camera fragments near the base of a frozen ravine. The official report said animal attack. Ethan never bought it. In the months that followed, grief hollowed him. He tried therapy, quit YouTube, drank too much. Then one night, he watched one of Liam's old clips, his brother standing in front of a waterfall, grinning, saying, "Every place has a story. Sometimes the story finds you." That line became Ethan's obsession. He started traveling again, not just to cope, but to chase that feeling, to figure out what Liam had been looking for in the wild. He changed the channel's name to No Map Necessary and rebranded as a fearless explorer, spinning danger into spectacle. His followers loved it. They didn't see the cracks in the smile, the exhaustion in his eyes, or the way his hand trembled slightly every time he set up a solo campsite. His therapist called it trauma repetition, seeking out perilous situations as a way to regain control over what he'd lost. Ethan just called it doing what Liam would have done. But as the years passed and the views rolled in, the hollowness didn't leave. He felt like a ghost mimicking a person. Then came the Reddit post, a grainy, black and white photo posted in a mountaineering forum titled "Man Spotted Near Monte Cielo Negro. Looks like he's been living there for years." The photo showed a figure standing between two rocks, hunched and bearded, barely visible. But something about the posture, the tilt of the head, looked eerily familiar. Ethan spent hours comparing it to old clips of Liam. The resemblance was uncanny. It couldn't be. But what if it was? The locals in the thread spoke cryptically, mentioning sightings, disappearances, strange lights, and missing time. One claimed the mountain collects the broken. Ethan's heart beat like a war drum. This wasn't just a story now. It was personal. He booked his flight to Argentina that night, packed his gear, and added a hidden compartment beneath his camera bag containing Liam's old compass. It hadn't moved since the day it was found near the ravine, caked in blood and ash, but Ethan had kept it close, a talisman against hopelessness. On the flight to El Chultan, he sat staring out the window, whispering his brother's name like a prayer. If Liam had somehow survived, if he was still out there, this trip wasn't about content anymore. It was a rescue mission. Or at least a reckoning. When he landed, he said nothing about the photo to the locals. He let them think he was just another vlogger chasing ghosts. But as he biked toward the trailhead with the mountain looming ahead, his thoughts spiraled inwards. He remembered the way Liam used to laugh uncontrollably when he slipped in mud, or the way he'd always start campfires with a spark instead of a lighter, claiming it was more honest. Ethan remembered the last message Liam ever sent, "Got a weird feeling. Like I'm being followed. But it's not dangerous. It's familiar." That phrase had haunted Ethan more than any detail in the autopsy report. What if the thing following him hadn't been a threat, but a guide? What if Liam had gone missing not by accident, but by choice? Now, as the trees grew denser and the light grew dimmer around him, Ethan knew one thing with certainty. If this mountain held answers, he wasn't leaving without them. Even if it meant he wouldn't leave at all. Ethan awoke on the second morning to a frost-laced fog blanketing his tent like a shroud, its cold fingers creeping under the zipper as if trying to find a way inside. The light outside had a strange quality, muted, sickly pale, as if the sun itself hesitated to touch the mountain. He checked his gear, documenting everything on camera, adding false cheer to mask the gnawing sense of unease growing in his gut. The previous night's scream still echoed in his mind, but he had reviewed the footage and found nothing. No movement, no voice, just static and silence. Still, he felt watched. His drone wouldn't launch, the remote refused to pair. His satellite phone blinked red. The solar charger was cracked, even though he swore it had been tucked away in his bag. Dismissing it all as bad luck, Ethan pressed deeper into the mountain, navigating a crude game trail that weaved like a scar through the dense underbrush. He found claw marks on a tree, deep, deliberate, too wide for any known animal. "Probably a bear," he mumbled to the camera. though every hair on his body stood upright. Around midday, he stumbled upon a clearing with a strange stone structure in the center, like a broken circle of jagged slabs, half swallowed by moss and time. Inside it lay a tattered backpack and a rusted tin cup. He inspected the bag and found a moldy journal with pages stuck together, its cover etched with initials, LC. His breath hitched. Liam Cole. The camera dropped to his side as he fumbled through the pages, many illegible, others filled with shaky handwriting and cryptic entries. It watches from the mist. Fire helps, but only a little. The mountain remembers me, and finally, I heard Ethan's voice today. It's not him. It wants me to follow. Ethan's legs went weak. This wasn't a coincidence. He hadn't told anyone about Liam's middle name, hadn't said a word about this journal's existence. It confirmed what he had feared and hoped. Liam had been here. And something else had been with him. As clouds churned overhead, thunder rolled low and angry, and within minutes, rain fell in needles, drenching the landscape and turning the trail to mud. Ethan slipped several times, cursing, gripping roots and rocks as he pulled himself back to higher ground. At dusk, he found a cave and decided to make camp inside, lighting a fire with trembling hands. The journal sat beside him, wrapped in a waterproof pouch. He filmed a somber update, his voice steady but distant, as if his mind were already unraveling the edges of reality. Outside, the rain became a roar, and wind howled through the cave's narrow throat like a living thing. He barely slept. Around 3 a.m., he was jolted awake by a rhythmic tapping outside, too deliberate for rain, too sporadic for falling debris. He stayed still, heart hammering, and reached for his camera. Just as he pressed record, a low whisper slithered through the cave entrance. It didn't sound like the wind. It sounded like his name. Ethan. He froze. It came again, softer, closer, spoken in the exact tone his brother had used to wake him during camping trips as kids. Ethan, wake up. He called out, his voice cracking, Liam. The whisper stopped. He grabbed his flashlight and moved to the entrance, illuminating the storm-slicked trees just beyond the cave. There, for the briefest second, a figure stood between the trees. Thin. Still. Watching. Then it vanished. He turned back to the fire, only to find it snuffed out, and his gear, his pack, water, rations, gone. All that remained was the journal and his camera, still blinking red. He played the footage back immediately, hoping to catch the figure, but the screen showed nothing. Just darkness and rain. He rewound to before he awoke, and a chill surged through him. At 2:47 a.m., the camera recorded his sleeping form. But he hadn't turned it on then. And in the background, faint but unmistakable, someone was breathing right next to him. The realization splintered his mind. Someone had been in the cave. Possibly watching. Possibly closer than he ever imagined. Panic set in. Alone, with no supplies and no working communication, Ethan now faced a mountain that was no longer just an obstacle, it was a presence. He wrapped himself in his emergency blanket, trying to stay warm, but sleep was impossible. In the silence, he whispered to himself, what if he never left? And worse, what if I can't? Ethan awoke to silence so profound it rang in his ears, as though the world had taken a breath and refused to exhale. The fog outside the cave had thickened overnight into a dense, grey soup, curling along the forest floor in slow, intelligent tendrils. His breath was visible even inside the cave, and he noticed his fingers had begun to tremble uncontrollably, not from cold alone, but from something deeper, something more primal. Hunger gnawed at him, and thirst dried his tongue to parchment. With his supplies stolen and fire extinguished, he knew staying in the cave meant slow death. But stepping back into the fog felt like walking into the jaws of something unseen and waiting. He chose movement. Slipping the journal into his jacket, he slung his camera over his shoulder and stepped into the mist. Visibility was limited to a few feet, and the world beyond that might as well have ceased to exist. As he moved uphill, hoping to reach higher ground and perhaps find a landmark, he began noticing strange shapes emerging through the haze, remnants of other campsites, partially buried in moss and thyme. A half-collapsed tent. A sleeping bag, still zipped, heavy with rain and something unspoken. A boot filled with water and something else, darker, thicker. The deeper he ventured, the more he realized the trail wasn't just scattered with debris, but with history. Warnings. Graves. Someone, or something, had made sure these stories never made it down. Around midday, he stumbled upon a rusted metal sign planted in the earth at an angle. Its letters were nearly gone, but he could make out a few faded words: Zona Prohibida, Protección de Memoria. Protected Memory Zone. That phrase chilled him in a way the cold never could. He moved on, guided now by instinct more than logic. Each turn felt chosen for him. Each rock seemed placed deliberately. The mist thinned for a moment, revealing what looked like a wooden watchtower far in the distance. He made for it, trudging through mud and ash until he arrived, only to find the structure collapsed long ago, vines choking its skeleton. But something near its base caught his eye, a pile of stones, neatly arranged, like a shrine. Atop them sat an object that stopped him cold, a small carving of a face. His face. Carved into the wood with jagged, trembling precision. The eyes were hollow sockets, the mouth wide open in silent scream. Etched beneath it were two words: Y.A. Elegist. You've already chosen. Panic surged. He staggered back, tripped, and landed hard, scraping his palms on stone. And that's when he heard it again, the voice. Ethan. It came from the left. Help me, this time, unmistakably Liam's voice. Fragile. Pleading. He spun around, calling into the void, but there was no answer. Only echoes. He began to run toward the sound, slipping on wet earth, clawing at branches. The fog moved with him, never thinning, as if alive and adapting. The voice grew louder, weaving between trees like a thread pulling him deeper. You're close, almost there. Then it shifted, changed, not just in tone, but in something fundamental. You remember this place, don't you? It asked. It wasn't Liam anymore. It was him. His own voice echoed back, distorted, with a sinister familiarity. Ethan's knees buckled. He clutched the journal like a talisman, flipping frantically through pages he'd already read. But one entry caught his eye, a page stuck to another he hadn't peeled apart before. This one was written in darker ink, with steadier hands. The mountain offers visions. It knows what you've lost. It gives you what you beg for, until you forget who you were. Beneath it, smaller, don't follow the voices. Not even mine. He dropped the journal. His mind reeled. Was he chasing Liam? Or something pretending to be him? The fog began whispering louder, layered now with dozens of voices, laughing, weeping, accusing. Some said his name. Others cursed it. One said, "You let him die." He covered his ears, screamed, and stumbled into a clearing. There, under a twisted tree, hung dozens of personal items. Necklaces, watches, IDs, like offerings. Trophies. He recognized one instantly. A silver ring, shaped like a coiled serpent, the same one Liam wore every day since college. Ethan reached for it with shaking fingers, only to recoil as the bark of the tree peeled back on its own, revealing slits in the wood, like eyes. He backed away, heart pounding, and realized the fog wasn't obscuring the forest. It was part of it. Feeding it. Watching through it. Then came the moral fracture, the crossroads etched into his bones. He could turn back, attempt the impossible descent and maybe escape with sanity intact, or he could go further and risk losing whatever tether to reality he had left. But if there was a chance Liam was alive, or if Liam had ever really died, could he walk away without knowing? Ethan stood trembling, surrounded by voices and rot, drenched and hollowed out. And then he said, aloud, not to the fog but to himself, "Show me the truth." The forest responded with silence. And then the fog parted. The fog retreated as though summoned by Ethan's declaration, slithering back into the trees and curling low over the ground like a defeated predator. For the first time in days, the sky peeked through, a grey, bruised expanse that offered neither comfort nor clarity. Before him stretched a narrow ravine, carved deep into the earth like a wound, and at its edge sat a structure, ancient, cracked stone walls leaning against one another for balance, its arched mouth yawning into darkness. The air around it was warmer, thick with a coppery scent that made the back of his throat burn. Ethan hesitated only a second before stepping inside. The air changed immediately, colder now, heavier, as if the cave had its own atmosphere, one untouched by wind or time. His flashlight flickered as he descended into the darkness, the walls growing tighter with each step. Then, suddenly, the tunnel opened into a wide chamber, and Ethan's breath left his lungs. Carvings lined the walls, crude and primitive, yet unmistakable. Human figures kneeling before a towering shape, their arms outstretched in worship or surrender. Some carvings showed the mountain itself crowned in fire, others displayed faces twisted in horror or rapture. At the center of the chamber sat a circle of stones like the one he'd seen in the clearing, and within it, bones. Human. Fresh. Draped in the remnants of outdoor gear. Among the tattered clothing, he saw patches, brand logos, initials stitched into collars. Some he recognized from online missing persons bulletins. One jacket bore Liam's initials. But what stopped him cold wasn't the jacket, it was the journal sitting next to it. His brother's, identical in style to the one Ethan had found before, but this one was full. No missing pages. No damaged ink. Hands trembling, Ethan opened it. The first entry dated nearly 5 years ago, one day after Liam had gone missing. "I survived," it read. "But I don't know if I'm alone." As he flipped through, the entries grew stranger. At first, they chronicled injury, survival tactics, attempts to find help. But soon, the tone shifted. "It watches me," Liam wrote. "It wants stories. It wants memories." Later, "I'm forgetting faces. Even my own. The mountain takes pieces." Then finally, "I saw Ethan today. But it wasn't him. I think it's learning how to be him." Ethan dropped the book. His stomach turned violently, and he doubled over, gasping. In that moment, he understood. Liam hadn't just died. He had been unmade. Consumed slowly by a force that didn't kill in the traditional sense but devoured memory, identity, voice. Ethan looked back at the carvings, suddenly recognizing their meaning. The people weren't worshipping. They were warning. Sacrificing themselves to stop whatever ancient awareness lingered here. Then he saw the final carving, hidden behind a crumbling slab. It showed 2 figures standing side by side at the mountain's peak, one whole, the other a hollowed-out shell. Beneath them, the same phrase, "Why a elegist? You've already chosen." Ethan turned and staggered deeper into the cavern, led by instinct more than reason, until he reached a narrow tunnel that opened into a second chamber. There, in the center, hunched and unmoving, sat a figure with a beard and matted hair, back to the entrance. The smell of smoke and damp earth filled the air. "Liam." Ethan croaked. The figure didn't move. He stepped closer, reaching out, when the figure slowly turned. It was Liam, but not. His eyes were too dark, too still, like mirrors with no reflection. His skin was stretched thin, mouth slightly open as if trying to remember how to form words. Then, he said, voice fragile and uncertain, like a child learning to speak. Ethan fell to his knees. "I'm here. I found you." But even as he said the words, he knew this wasn't salvation. Liam blinked slowly, then whispered, "Not much left. It keeps what it likes." A tear traced down Ethan's cheek. "Why didn't you leave?" Liam shook his head. "Couldn't. Every path leads back. And now it knows you." Ethan felt it then, not just around him, but in him. The sense of being unraveled from the inside out. His memories felt looser, as if someone had untied the laces keeping them together. His childhood, their last hike, his mother's voice, they began to blur. "You can fight it," he whispered. But Liam just looked at him with hollow sorrow. "I tried." Then, suddenly, the walls began to tremble. Stones cracked. A low groan filled the air, like the mountain itself exhaling after a long wait. Liam clutched his brother's hand. "Run." But Ethan didn't move. The chamber was collapsing, but part of him knew there was no escaping the mountain now. Not with the truth. Not with what he'd seen. But then he remembered the camera. Still recording. Still transmitting. If he couldn't leave, maybe his footage could. Maybe the world would know. He sprinted back through the tunnel as rocks fell and voices screamed from the walls. At the entrance, he hurled the camera upward into the light, praying it landed somewhere visible. Then the ground split beneath him, and darkness swallowed him whole. 3 days after Ethan's GPS signal vanished from the grid, a shepherd found the camera. It had landed between rocks just off a narrow ridge, partially hidden by brambles, its red light blinking faintly as the last fragments of battery life drained. Authorities retrieved it and handed it off to a local ranger, who, more out of curiosity than protocol, plugged it into an office computer. The footage was erratic, glitched, corrupted in parts, but one sequence played clearly. Ethan's face, pale and soaked with sweat, stared directly into the lens. "If you're watching this," he said, voice trembling, "do not come here. Don't follow me. Don't follow anything." Then static. A scream. Silence. Within hours, the footage leaked online. Forums exploded with speculation, some calling it viral marketing, others a hoax, a few recognizing the logo on his jacket and connecting it to Liam Cole. 4 days, the mountain drew attention from vloggers, investigators, even military contractors. But those who ventured too close found the trails unrecognizable, the forests dense in ways they hadn't been on any satellite image. One experienced mountaineer returned after a single night at base camp, muttering nonsense, unable to recall his name. The government quietly closed off the area, citing geological instability. But rumors churned. Then, on the 7th day, Ethan Cole walked out of the forest. Alone. His clothes were torn, his skin marked with shallow cuts in symmetrical patterns, almost like runes. He didn't speak. Didn't blink much. Carried no bag. No supplies. Just the wooden carving of a face clutched tightly in his fist. The same one he had found earlier. Except this one had no mouth. The locals, already wary of the mountain, whispered of ancient spirits, of old debts paid in memory and flesh. Ethan was taken to a hospital, where doctors treated dehydration and mild hypothermia. But psychologically, they found something more troubling. He couldn't remember his last name. Couldn't remember the purpose of his trip. When shown footage from his own channel, he blinked as if watching someone else. "That's not me," he whispered. They called it dissociative amnesia. Trauma-induced. But the therapists said something didn't add up. His memories weren't just lost. They'd been overwritten. His family flew in, but when his mother entered the room, Ethan stared at her like she was a stranger. "You look like someone I used to know," he said, before turning to face the window. As days passed, he began to draw obsessively, always the same image, a mountain with 2 figures at the top, one solid, one hollow. Eventually, the hospital discharged him into private care. He vanished 2 weeks later. His social media accounts were deleted. His YouTube channel was scrubbed clean except for a single unlisted video. That video, captured by an unknown IP and later mirrored on conspiracy forums, showed a static shot of the mountain at dusk. In the final frame, before the screen went black, 2 small figures stood at the summit. One turned to look directly at the camera. Its eyes glowed faintly, and its outline shimmered, as if it weren't fully part of this world. Online sleuths compared the figure to Ethan's last known profile image. The resemblance was undeniable. Speculation reached a fever pitch. Was it really him? Had he escaped? Had he been replaced? And what had happened to Liam? Theories swirled: doppelgangers, ancient entities feeding off human memory, sentient fog born from forgotten rituals. But no proof ever surfaced beyond the footage and whispers. Occasionally, hikers reported sightings of a man in the woods near the restricted zone, sitting beside a fire that produced no smoke. He never spoke. Never moved when approached. One said she tried to photograph him, but the image came out corrupted, distorted by static and symbols. She never hiked again. Others claim the mountain is growing, rising higher, shifting its trails, becoming more labyrinthine, as if it were alive and learning. And always, at the base, the same hand-carved sign remains: LQ sub sin permiso, barge sin alma. In the end, no one truly knows what Ethan found. Or what found him. But those who stare long enough at his last recorded image swear they can see something behind his eyes, something older than grief, deeper than fear. Something that remembers. Something still watching. And so the mountain waits, cloaked in mist and myth, whispering its promises to those broken enough to listen. Because the mountain does not take lives. It takes stories. And if you offer it yours, it might let you walk away. But you'll never be the same.